Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Game Dev Show. I'm here with David and Andrew today, and we've got a couple of really interesting topics to talk about. There's some AI-related stuff that I think is going to be a very important discussion, and then we're going to talk about CES and some of the new tech that's coming out as well. Maybe Johnny will hop in live from CES too. I know he's out there. I don't know if he's watching, but if so, that'd be cool. So how's it going, guys?
Yeah, all good.
Good. It's good to see you both here. I know a couple other people were busy this week and probably not going to be able to make it in, but like I said, maybe Johnny will come in. Hello, everybody in chat. If you're here, just please drop in, say hello. Let us know what you think of whatever random stuff we're talking about. And yeah, I guess we'll get started. Hold on. Open up my drink and get going. All right. So,
not sponsored.
Not sponsored.
Not yet. I need a Rockstar sponsorship. One day. I drink. I mean, I shouldn't admit it, but I drink way too many of these. At least like 3 a day. I've got multiple fridges. I have 4 fridges in my house that are full of these Rockstars. Well, 3 in the house and 1 in the office full of them, because it's the main thing that I drink, so that I keep the weight off.
Good healthy lifestyle. Yeah,
it's, for me, honestly, it's practically water with some caffeine. It's 0 calories. What I used to drink before was the ones that were full of calories, 240 a can, and I put on a ton of weight, largely because of drinking just those drinks and drink 700 or 1,000 calories and energy drinks on top of my food. So,
I remember when you used to come and stay around my house. And for people that don't know, we used to do hacks together around my house. So 4 of us would come and just sleep in my house and annoy the wife completely. And he would get through these energy drinks constantly throughout the 2 days. And we used to just watch him to wonder when he was going to have a heart attack. It was
hopefully never. I try to limit the caffeine. And yeah, I just don't drink coffee or anything else. Just a little bit of Rockstar, or a lot of Rockstar. But anyway, on to more important things. So one of the main things I wanted to talk about today was the AI stuff. It's been all over everywhere. I've done a couple of videos about it, and I was actually planning on recording a video on it this morning, but I just haven't gotten around to it. Specifically, in this case, on AI image generation and concept art and general logos. I was actually in a meeting right before this talking about using AI for website image generation stuff, not necessarily games, but loosely related. I was showing them some of my GameDev generated images that I'd made and instantly got inspired to start using that same kind of thing for his web stuff. So I know Andrew's done a lot with the AI image generation stuff. I don't know if you've played with it too much, Dave. I assume you've probably been using it for years and have all kinds of crazy stuff that you just haven't shared. But is it something you've been paying attention to a lot too? Yeah,
and you've got to. It's 2023 will be the year of this thing. Like, it will just be the topic. It's already been discussed on many forums that this is the next generational change in how human behavior will be. You've got the steam engine, you've got the wheel, you've got all the rest. AI generation and AI assistance and all the rest, this is the next turning point. You've already seen Microsoft have turned around and they've said that Bing will have ChatGPT integrated into it. Google, supposedly, there's a rumor going around that they had a big hands meeting in their AI department to say, we have to do this, otherwise we're irrelevant in less than 5 years, because every search engine will have part of this integrated into it.
Yep. That's my expectation. It feels like, at least ChatGPT feels like the beginning of a Google replacement, like the next iteration, or something that Google will eventually take, and put into there, or what like I said, the other engines like Bing doing, because it's just so damn useful. I use it, I'd say, half of the time when I want to find a solution to a problem now. If it's not something where I'm like, where is this business? Where is this product? What is this thing? Or, If it's not something where I know I need to find a very specific place, thing, or person in time, or an article, I just go to ChatGPT. If it's a question like a technical one of how to do something, that's like my default now. I just open it up, I type it in. If it doesn't work, I'll go back over to Google. But a lot of the time, it'll give me a really cool, good answer, and I find that I just enjoy it a lot more than clicking through a bunch of links and looking for stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and even just your day-to-day tasks. I've sat there before and go, what do I want to eat tonight? And I literally type in, give me some suggestions of what I want to eat. And then because I have dietary needs, I turn around and say, yeah, but make it for this dietary need. And it will then give me more details on how it can alter those 4 suggestions to suit my dietary needs. And I'll say, right, okay, give me more information on that particular one. And then it will give me an ingredient list and how to cook it. And there you go. I don't have to think about what I'm going to cook that night. And you can specify that I have these ingredients. Tell me what it is. So yeah, it's going to be changing.
And that, I think that's the use case that I actually envision. I don't know how it will replace a search engine per se. I can imagine using it, but I also imagine that once a chatbot is giving us the results, we'll have no idea which ones are ads. And I think that will be a big problem we'll have to overcome, because it will be very easy for the responses to be absolutely not the right responses because somebody's paying them and we just won't have an idea. Maybe regulations, who knows? But I think the idea of conversational AIs, like, you know, we've got Alexas and stuff. I go to my friend's house, I'm like, Alexa, play music, and it half the time listens, half the time it doesn't work. But it can't do actual things. It doesn't actually do things. It's a pushes buttons for you, and it's a limited set of buttons. But this idea of saying, now I can imagine working in Unity and you know, building a scene and thinking, oh shit, I need to make a cliff in this zone. And I can imagine saying, hey, what's the best way to make a cliff? And then, you know, an AI that's integrated with an application would probably be more than just the AI, but it also have access to specific things for the application. So I can imagine it saying, well, there's a cliff on the asset store. There's one you already bought. We can just import that if you want. Here's what it would look like, because I kind of already did that for me. Or if you want, just use the terrain tool and do this. Do you want to help with that? And then it'll teach me how to use the terrain tool, and it will like just be my partner. You know, like I don't imagine the AI replacing my brain and telling me what to do, but I imagine it being someone, a thing I can talk to. I shouldn't say someone because it's not a person, it's a thing. And it's a thing I can talk to. It's a tool that's extremely useful, extremely versatile, and very good at understanding what I'm trying to ask. And then I do have to have the job, though, of interpreting its responses, because I can imagine it would give you a recipe and you might say, I'm allergic to something, and it may say, oh, that's fine, this doesn't have it, when it's just wrong. It does have it, you know.
Yeah,
and that might kill you. And I mean, for coding, people use it for coding. I've used it for coding many times in the past 2 weeks, and every once in a while it gives you either something that just doesn't work, like it looks like it works and it doesn't work. That's not too common in my experience, because I ask for more simple things. Or one of the most common things I ask for is, can I make this method shorter? Because I know I can, but I can't remember the exact syntax. Or sometimes I'm like, feel like I probably can, but I really don't know how. And oftentimes it gives me the solution. But from time to time, it doesn't understand what you're really trying to do. I had one method that computed values of stats basically in a system, and the order mattered because some stats would influence others. So it had to be in a very specific order. It gave me a much shorter version that used this recursive loop thing. It was amazing. It was like, woo, tiny, but it ignored the order. So suddenly I had to revert back to my old code. Another instance, I had a bunch of lists, and 2 lists were the same type, but they were going to separate variables of that list type. And it gave me a shorter version that combined them together and sent all of them to both. I'm like, well, that's not what I meant. So you do have to understand what it's giving you. Which is where I think that's the conversational aspect. Like, you can't just trust it. It's not God. It's not a dictionary. It's not an encyclopedia. It is a thing that will help you come to a better decision faster, or to give you more ideas faster. But you definitely need to be using it as a tool and not as a replacement for your own thought processes, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've done a video recently on this exact thing, and it is just a tool. It is just another search thing that you can use that can iterate and change the things that you're asking for. So whereas you'd go to SourceForge and you go, give me this, you can say, okay, you gave me that. That's great. Now change this bit, do this different, do this. And I played the other day with building websites with it. It just said, right, okay, I want a website that's this theme, completely irrelevant theme. Give me a website that does this theme. And it started laying some stuff out. And I was like, yeah, that's great, but I want this to have separation. I want this to be this. I want to put an advertisement on the side. And as this was just testing the conversationalness of it and how it would iterate on what it had already done, keeping things relevant, not having to type that whole search in again. Okay, I want this website with this thing. Just being able to say, I just want this thing. And it's saying, right, okay, you had the website, let's add that on. And the video I'd done illustrated one big problem with ChatGPT when coding, when there's a developing product like Unity, where it looks for how much source material have I got on that particular subject. And I will give you details on that particular subject. And when you say regenerate, it searches for and goes, okay, I'm going to give them something else to do with that. I'm going to give them something else to do with that. And it's still looking at this massive data trove. And all you have to do is try asking it for input with the Unity system. And it will always give you the older input system. It won't give you the newer one. If you say, I want to put an overlay on my editor, it will give you the old system of doing it. It won't give you the new overlay and toolbar system that Unity has. So that's where I see some of it falling down. It looks, there's 100 references on this and one reference on that, because that one reference is on the new stuff. I'm going to give you many times the stuff that's in the old stuff before I give you that new one. So that's one of the things it needs improvement on that I see.
Do you think that's largely influenced by just the training set, though? Because I think they
it's
canceled
absolutely.
it at 21, right?
Yeah.
It was like up to there. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think once you start biasing the training sets towards newer, then that's okay. But then we're talking about code. Then you start looking at other things where you might say, okay, we don't want to bias it in these particular ways because that removes an opinion piece from somebody else. We're leaving code. So there's
going to medicine or something else where it's
balancing
not
act.
Straightforward as like, this is literally just changing the way that we transform into assembly, right? Like the code, it's solid. Like you don't have to worry.
And you're going to see biases in that sense. I mean, as game devs, we try and move away from bias. An interesting thing, I worked for a company a while back. We were talking way back when we were doing facial recognition and working out where people were facing the camera. And there were inherent biases in the training set because of the type of people we had in our recorded media. And we had to move away from that because of how it missed people. And the same thing happens here. If your training set is very biased towards one certain group, then it's going to be problematic for the wider audience. So it's things to be aware of. And ChatGPT does suffer from some of that stuff because of the training set and the way they're learning how to unbias the training sets.
That's an important thing. When I was using Art Breeder, which judges faces. This was a few years ago. It came out, one of the more early publicly available AI things. It homogenized everything. You could get white people, you get Asian people, you get black people, you could get all sorts of type of people, but you couldn't mix the two. If you started mixing a dark skin with a lighter skin, you'd get a medium skin. If you started mixing an Asian person with a white person, you'd get a mostly white person. And in general, it would default to white people. So it's an interesting thing. I've actually been looking at the similar thing with Midjourney. I think they've made strides. I think they've done something internally. I just did a query for a person wearing a hat, and I'll send you the link here in the chat. And it gave me 4 different people who all look like there's 2 different seemingly genders here and 2 different skin tones here. So I didn't give it any direction besides a person wearing a hat, and it gave me 4 different people. It didn't used to do that. It used to give you mostly white males. Mostly, not always. It was better than past systems, but it would do that. Now, whenever I do create characters, one of the changes, I'll find a prompt that I like. I'll find something that's consistent, and then I'll go through and I'll say, give me a dark-skinned male, dark-skinned female, dark-skinned old male, dark-skinned old female, Asian male, Asian female. Do all these different versions in order to get, and then now I'm even going a little bit further because I'm like, okay, this is too generic still. So now I'm going, give me Samoan, give me Ethiopian, give me Norwegian, and you get distinctly different looks when you start typing in distinct different nationalities essentially. And in order to get a true variety, if you're trying to make people, you're going to have to do some work still. Unfortunately, I think they're definitely making strides though on making it so that it's not all one.
It'd be interesting. A lot of times when you go on sites looking at how to write prompts, there's not a lot of people talking about the exact thing you're talking about, where they talk saying how to unbias the data by supplying these extra prompt commands to form that unbiased nature. And it's something we have to look at in the game dev community to, I mean, say for instance, you go on the Unity Asset Store and you start looking for characters. Guess what? If you start counting out, there's a bias there that's existing already. So knowing how to unbias our particular view on what we're going to generate, that's a thing that we have to be aware of.
Yeah. A lot of the risk, I think, in art for AI art is going to be, and others have raised it, you go to Midjourney, you see a lot of people searching for trending on ArtStation. I don't know if that actually has an impact. I suspect it probably has no impact. People are just thinking it does, and so they use it. But the idea is now people go on ArtStation posting their AI art, and now AI art will start sampling AI art, and eventually you'll start getting artifacts being sampled. So AI art artifacts, weird fingers being sampled, and the AI will probably think, no, lots of people have 8 fingers. I see it in the images. Tons of people have 8 fingers. You guys are wrong. And Chat GPT will eventually say, no, some people have 8 fingers. according to Midjourney, some people have 8 fingers. So we do run the issue beyond bias. I guess biases, it come in all forms, and one of those biases is information bias and lack of information bias, where suddenly information that we get from a system starts being the thing that we all know because we all get it. And I think you could probably draw analogies to mass media in general and general knowledge of things, especially when it comes to old wives' tales that suddenly people are like, wait, no. Everybody knows this is true. And then you look at it and you're like, holy shit, that's not true. But it's just one of those things that everybody's heard it. Therefore, it must be true because everybody knows. I can't think of one off the top of my head for some reason. But there's a whole lot of really silly things out there that many people think is true. That is not at all true. And I think that's going to be one of the big hurdles with AI, because eventually AI is going to start thinking things are true that aren't true. And people are going to start trusting it because they assume that the internet doesn't lie.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is stepping outside of the whole, is it ethical to be using Midjourney to create images because of, it's where it's sourced and all the rest of it. And that subject's been covered to infinitum, so we don't have to jump into it here. All I would say is when you generate your images, see if there's a signature on it, because there's definitely been several images that I've gone in and created in Midjourney, and there's a signature right in the corner, and you're like, right, that's an artist's signature. And I sit down with concept artists on the regular, and a lot of them hate it, obviously, but some of them are using it now as a way to generate ideas. For idea generation, they never use the final images, but they are producing more stuff from that. They put in a mech and they say, okay, give me iterations on that. I like what you're doing there. I'm going to take that and I'm going to build that into my images. And the way I put it is, when I was working in AAA way back, one of our concept artists, what he used to do is take loads of photos and he'd cut out sections of those photos, put it in an image, and then he would go over that whole photo. And he was amazing. I mean, he's worked at Weta, he's worked at Sony, he's worked at all these places. But that's how he did it. He took loads of images, put them in, and recolored them in his style with lots of things in the background. And he created new stuff, obviously overlaid on top of that. But for backgrounds and things like that, he would do a lot of that work. He would basically create a train crashing through a barrier. He would go and get a train. He'd go get a barrier. He would do the crash himself. But a lot of the background stuff just basically minimized the amount of effort he had to put into the work he was doing. So there's definite uses for it. And some people are going to be creating stuff which just basically spits out Midjourney or whatever AI they're using, and that's a product. They put it straight into the product, no touching up at all. It doesn't see the light of Photoshop. It goes out with 8 fingers. but it depends what camp you're in. Some people say you have 8 fingers, 2 thumbs, but anyway, it's just how it's going to happen. If you ignore it, you're missing out on the revolution, because this thing ain't going anywhere. Like, if you think AI is going to disappear, no, it won't get cancelled.
It's so powerful. I think this is very similar in many ways to Unity itself, and the asset flip into Steam. There are people who use Unity, download an asset, download the free demo scenes or games from the Unity itself, and they put them on Steam, and people are like, what the hell? What's wrong with you? But there's a whole hell of a lot of indie developers out there. I think there's a few in the chat right now who probably make some decent cash doing something that they never would have been able to do if it were not for a system that did allow for asset flips. And AI allows for people to take advantage. It allows for them to be a lazy person who just spits out a bunch of images and says, here it is, I did all this. And it's like, well, you did nothing beyond pushing the buttons. And maybe you came up with a good prompt, maybe you didn't. So we're going to see that. That's going to be the way. But you got to ignore that, because customers will ignore that. People ignore asset flips on Steam. It's pretty easy to spot a terrible game on Steam. In most cases, when Book of the Dead came out, I did notice a whole bunch of Book of the Dead videos as suddenly new games that people were very excited to play. But once they realized what it was pretty quick. So I think that's not going away. But like it's a tool, and with the concept arts, you do a prompt. Jason, I don't know if you want to pull it up right now. Do a prompt where you ask for a video game UI, FPS, sci-fi, and it will give you a whole bunch of ideas for how to lay out your UI screen. You could say character creation scene. You can say pause screen. You can say inventory screen. You can say portrait, a character portrait, all these sorts of things. And it's going to spit out all these ideas, none of which you can use. You can't Photoshop that out and bring in your game. You could do that a little bit, but you're going to have to replace it with actual art. But what you can do is come up with great new ideas that you never would have come up with without, a lot of thinking and maybe some marijuana. And there's the tools I don't know off the top of my head. There's tools out there where they show screens from published games, so you can get ideas that way. Great. And now you can get ideas from an AI that'll just create brand new things for you. Yeah.
So here it is. I put it in a video game UI, FPS, sci-fi, and it's generating right now. We'll pull it up in a second. Oh, there it goes. Popped up to the bottom. And anybody that hasn't used this, it's free. You can just go to Midjourney and sign up. It's free for the first some number of images. Oh yeah,
and on the relaxed mode, it's free for forever. It's just a little bit slower, and it's not that much slower. It's just like go do its thing for a few minutes while it spits out what's going to spit out.
That's right, and you get like a couple of them fast, right? Like 20 fast, and then the rest go into the slowed down mode.
Yeah, I recently used it to create a new logo that I think I'm going to end up just using for Infinity PBR. I don't have a logo.
Oh, nice.
And I spit out some, and I did some work. I did some fine tuning on the prompt, and I found some that I'm like, okay, this is actually good. I'm going to Photoshop it a little bit because it does have a few quirks here and there, but otherwise it's like, this is pretty solid. And I would have had to, I'm all for paying people, but I would not have paid somebody for this because it's just not that important to me. The business isn't that huge. So, I'm not going to pay someone $1,000 for this, but I would like to have a logo. So I haven't in 5 years. I haven't had a logo. So,
Yeah. And that leads to one of the points that is a big discussion I'm having with clients and a lot of other people. The amount of job creation you're going to see where not so much job creation, but services creation. So I guarantee by the end of the year, Fiverr is going to have 1,000 new copy editors. It's going to have 1,000 new logo creators. It's going to have 1,000 new background creators, website creators, all that sort of thing, because people are taking advantage. I watched a video on somebody talking about copy editing in particular, where they said, you get this partial copy from the client, and people that don't know copy editing, basically building a story of words, basically that sort of thing, and making it pretty.
Making an ad, basically.
Yeah,
right?
In a nutshell.
Essentially writing an ad.
But you can put into ChatGPT the client's definition, the client's copy they're giving you, and it will give you stuff back with a few extra little prompting and part of the conversationalness. And then you can send that back to the client. And most clients won't realize that this is generated by AI.
And
It's
you
the
could
same
do
with
the extra step and flesh it out. You can take that and then make it your own. Eventually, we will be able to train these chatbots on our own voice. You'll be able to write out a few essays, a few things, and you can say, "Hey, this is my whatever voice that I use in my job." You can train it to speak like you, so that it will spit out things that isn't what other people will get if they do the exact same process, because you're using a different data set based on your own data. And I think artists can do that with their own work. And eventually, I mean, musicians will the same thing. I think it's gonna be a job creator in the end, like everything we're all worried is gonna take our jobs. Some jobs will definitely shift, some jobs will definitely be less valuable. But for the logo thing, really, if I was in the shop for a logo, the biggest hurdle with going to Fiverr, going to an artist, is understanding what's in my head, them understanding what's in my head, and me obviously not really knowing what I want. I'll know it when I see it, right? And so that process of iteration on what does this guy want? What does this client of mine want? The artist doesn't really know. They have to be really good at communicating and trying to eke out from me what it is I really want. That's a skill set and a half. If I can go on to Midjourney, spit out 100 different images and be like, ooh, these 3 I like this for this, this for this, this for this. That's so much more efficient for the concept artists who maybe now they charge the same amount, or maybe they charge a little bit less, but they spend a fraction of the time and a fraction of the time going back and forth after delivering me something that I'm like, it's not quite right.
Yeah, I want these changes. I want this color different and all the rest. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I used to do a lot with, even before the AI revolution, when I used to hire people to do my logos and everything, is I would then, as soon as they sent me the logo, I would put it into Google as a search and go, has this person stolen this logo already? Because so many things are just several clip arts merged together, and there's your new logo and all the rest. And I think people should do the same sort of thing when they're getting stuff back from this. Go on and make sure you're not doing trademark infringement because it got a massive part of your logo from a certain source and all the rest of it.
Or your character is a character from a game that you just haven't played and didn't recognize.
I Google image search everything that comes from people that work for me. Well, not everything, obviously, but a lot of the stuff where I'm not dubious of the source, but I want to check it because I can't afford to have trademark infringement lawsuits coming at me left, right, and center because somebody basically decided to cheap out and just start sourcing this stuff offline or anything like that. Now, I don't think any of my artists would do that, but obviously I build other companies for other people and I don't know all the people that work for them. So I need to make sure that's in there. So it's just something to bear in mind. Now, something I would like to see from this ChatGPT revolution, all the OpenAI stuff, is a change in the way we look at templates. This is something I've had a big discussion with people about. If you start Unity at the moment, you say, I want to make a 2D game. I want to make a 2D game that's URP. I want to make a 2D game HDRP. I want to make a 3D game. I want to make a VR game. I want to make and it gives you a very bog standard, here's a template. It's got some VR-ness to it. It's imported these certain packages and all the rest. But sometimes you'll sit there and go, right, I want the VR template, but I want the URP, but I want this, and I want to use this package. And you just can't do that with Unity at the moment. And some people need to, when they start going through the packages, they're then searching for everything they need. And this is where I think some of this AI can come into play. If you go on and say, okay, I'm going to make a VR game. This VR game has to look really tidy, but it has to go out on mobile. It has to go out on a wireless headset. Therefore, it don't want to use HDRP. I want to use URP. Specifying, I'm going to go out to a mobile headset, in particular this one, and I'm going to want it to look this certain way, and I'm going to want it to do that. Being able to give that all that information and it turn around and say, okay, it looks like you want to create a 3D template that has a URP system in it, that already has all the XR management stuff loaded up, that has this particular headset checked so those APIs are in. It wants to use the new input system because that will give you this, that, and the other that you specified. So being able to start your project with just a conversation will be super impactful for the future. So that is something that I could see. That is a job creation that I could see coming on for every piece of software you're doing. I mean, we're talking about it in Unity, but think about when you use Excel or Google spreadsheets. Okay, I'm going to do this. My wife constantly messages me and says, okay, I need an algorithm to do this for this particular thing that I'm doing budgetary wise and all the rest of it. Or how does a budget work in this scenario? Or how do I do this math? Her being able to turn around and say, exactly specify to a bot what she's trying to do will save me time, because I don't have to do it and then explain how it works, because those numbers can't be right. They are. Don't question my math. Marriage is good. So
trying to replace yourself.
Yeah, I do. I want to replace myself. I mean, you think about all the times that you get phone calls from somebody who's like, I don't know how to do this, or I'm not sure about this. And it's not because they don't know how to do it. They know how to look up on APIs. They know how to do research. They don't know what the terms are.
Yeah,
they don't know what they're trying to do. And that is, I think, the biggest change that we're going to see, where you don't need to know the exact terms. You don't need to be a search engine genius where you're typing in things and some are in quotes and some aren't in quotes and you're using special figures and all the rest of it. It just does it for you. And Photoshop, Excel, anything like that will basically have these built in as a template instructional guide, or even I want to do this particular thing. I don't do a lot of photography, but I'd like to turn around and say to a camera, look, it's a really low light condition and it's this and it's that and it's this, and I want neon signs. It's going to look cyberpunk. And my camera to go, well, okay, you want this ISO level, you want this. And have you thought about grabbing this lens to do this? It's an upsell for a lot of things as well.
I think there's this, I just lost my thought. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was just thinking that it would be interesting if it kind of does get into some of the, or when it does get into some of these other tools like Photoshop and Premiere and stuff, because there's a lot of things like in Photoshop that I would love to do, but I don't have the artistic skill to do it. Right? If I could just explain it and have it AI generate me a couple versions of it, and we're like, that's what I was thinking, it'd be very, very cool. And that's why it's been so handy for me on Midjourney, because I'm terrible at art, and I'm also kind of like the problem you were saying, Andrew. I have a hard time communicating with an artist what it is that I want. So a lot of time it's because I just don't really know. I loosely kind of know, but I have a hard time describing it. But if I go on to Midjourney and I just generate images, type in the ideas that I have, and then modify it a little bit, I end up with great options that I can just send over. And one of the things I wanted to share today was like this concept piece right here was one. It was just one of the ones I liked, and I was like, "Oh, this little alien dude's cool. Be kind of a cool bad guy boss for my next coursework stuff." I hopped on to Fiverr and got him, sent him that image, and then got this back, like the next day. I never would have come up with this if I was trying to describe it. A big robot with two colors in the head and an antenna and some giant blaster arms and a kind of cartoony look. Like, I couldn't have described this, but the picture did it fine for me. And I had plenty of pictures to choose from, right? I just kind of went through and generated tons and tons of images and then picked the ones that, like for these, I don't even know where those ones were. They were way back somewhere. These are regenerations of them. Just found the thing that I thought was cool. And even for the thumbnail today, all I did was take a screenshot of us from last week and use that as the source and say, imagine this as a cartoon. And then I hit the button a couple times, regenerating until I found one that looked like a couple of us sitting there where it wasn't too strange. Right?
Why are they all old?
I don't know. I think that's probably just biased on the one that
the
I
AI
on.
doesn't work. The AI is wrong. I take back everything I said.
Yes, there are a lot of options, but the ones that I clicked were the old ones. I think probably just because they resonated the most.
So this is one of the things I think is missing out on ArtStation, because a lot of people are saying, okay, you've got to mark down that you don't want your images used as a source for producing this stuff. A lot of people are going down that route now, marking their sites or whatever. This is not to be used for AI sourcing or anything. One thing I think is missing as an opportunity for ArtStation and all the rest is to produce these images and say, okay, because even the image you produce is never 100% of what you want. And as you were stating earlier, Andrew, you'll then send it to somebody and say, okay, I want these changes to it. For the actual bot to turn around and say, again, willing participants have gone into it, but you say to the artist, okay, when we use yours as an art source, your name comes up, your link comes up. So when I get an image like you just done for that old man, it might turn around and say, if this image isn't quite right, would you like to get in contact with artists that create this sort of art? And then it goes through and finds those people and then gives you the opportunity to contact those people as, look at this source, look at this source, look at this source. Oh, I've gone to David and he's doing exactly the same technique, the same look, the same feel, the same sort of characterization as I'm seeing in the images I'm generating from Midjourney. Oh, and he's available to hire to basically alter, change, produce more, create a whole character set for me. That's an opportunity that is missing in a lot of this generative stuff. And I think you might see that from something like ArtStation in the future to try and appease the source. Try and convince people to let them use source. I know I got an email through the other day from Shutterstock or Adobe, one of the ones I put my photography up onto. Terrible photography. I ain't linking it. But saying, if we use your image in a generation and that person buys that image, you will get a cut of that. Now, I'm not going to defend that at all, and I'm not going to go against it, or I'm not going to promote that at all. I don't know as a person how much that comes out as and what I'd lose out in the long run from that. Obviously not a lot. As I said, my photography is terrible. But for big photographers, that could be a massive loss. Or it could be a big gain. I don't think the analytics are in yet on how that's going to work through. So that's one of the things I'm watching to see how these big companies institute selling images to clients and relating that money they sell or that service they sell back to the source material it came from.
I think a lot about music in that regard. I, like many people, fancy that I can sing really well when I'm alone in my car. I also know a few chords on the guitar. I just don't know what chords they are when I play them. And I can pretend like I know guitar from a few things I've picked up over the years. I would love to produce music. I love the idea of making music. I think there's a composer in my head. The problem is I don't have the skills to play an instrument. I haven't learned it. I'm probably not going to spend the time to learn it. And right now, today's world requires for you to be a singer-songwriter, you are required to be able to sing, be able to play an instrument, and to be able to create music. 3 separate skill sets. You could say there's a fourth. You probably have to have a good stage presence as well. So at least 3 separate skill sets. I can imagine so many people right now who would be producing amazing, compelling, moving music, but they lack 2 of those 3 things. They do have the ability in their head to come up with amazing sounds, to come up with amazing music, if they had the ability to produce those sounds. Things like GarageBand and other tools do lead people towards that. And I think in a lot of the music genres, people making beats, you don't need to have the ability to play the drums to make beats anymore. You used to have the ability to move your hands in rhythm. You don't anymore. And I think over time, we're going to see a difference between, hey, this is somebody who can play guitar really well, and this is somebody who can write guitar music really well, but can't play a lick of guitar because they understand the instrument. They understand the concepts about music. They know how to tell a system it needs to have a certain, I don't know the word, so I'm going to make up vibration to this, low E string. It needs to sound like this. And they know the right words, similar to Googling the right terms. And they can get out of a system something amazing that they never could have done before. And that piece of art essentially is now new and exists only because this person had a tool available to them. Across the board, video editing, being able to go into Premiere and say, hey, I need this should be a wipe. This should be a wipe, but I need to fade it to a really deep purple. Whatever it is, you fill in the blank. Use your magic. It's going to be amazing. And I can't wait for the future.
Yeah, have you seen this Harmon AI thing? Harmony? I don't know. happening. It looks like it's in a music or audio generation one too. I haven't seen this either, but it was mentioned in chat, so I'm gonna pop it up. Maybe take a look at that. It's on the list of things to look at. Another one that I wanted to show too was this Tome one. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It does presentations. So here I put in it's going to give me a presentation on a robotics company named Altered Mechanics, and you just hit enter and it will generate out like a full presentation.
This is going to be interesting. Don't do this. You're going to make me lose my job.
No, I'm making your job automated for you, trying to make it nice and easy for you, so you don't have to outsource it for you any second. Now this is the tome.app one, and it was, I think, free for, I don't know, 30 or so presentations or something like that, and you got to pay. But it looks like it just ties in with DALL-E and ChatGPT though to generate all of these slides. It's almost done. So we got, let's see, future of robotics, the introduction, their products. See, they got a nice little robot there, robotics company. Oh, I should have made it about virtual reality though. I forgot to mention that.
I had read recently New York here in the States has banned AI tools from their schools because the kids might cheat. I think that's a very short-sighted thing. First of all, the kids, they're smart. They're not idiots. They're going to get around it. All kids get around all the blocks in all of the schools. And second, what they need to be teaching.
Allow them to bring a phone that has its own internet connection.
I know. What they need to do, they need to teach kids, this is good. This is how you should start making your thing, and then make it your own. Like, you know, someone that in the Brett just mentioned about the music, potential copyright infringement. Absolutely. Any musician writing a song from their own head has the same potential for copyright infringement. It happens all the time. People write something they think is unique that they're, you know, but somebody else wrote the exact same chords, you know, somewhere else in time in another place. I think the goal here, as we said earlier, David, is a tool. Use it as a tool. It is not something that just makes stuff for you. It's a partner and a tool, and it has to be used. Like a hammer doesn't make you a house, but it certainly helps.
Yeah. So Dave, I want to talk about this one real quick before we start jumping into CES stuff. Brett mentioned potential copyright infringement. I think that's obvious when it comes to images and music, but he mentioned code too. Do you think that's an issue? I can't picture there being enough code coming out of this thing that it's copywritten, that it's something that you have to deal with. But I know, like, I've been in corporate environments where somebody copied code off of Stack Overflow, and then it went through this review, and we had to literally, like, lawyers. So, you know, somebody else has to rewrite this who's never seen this code before. It's been a situation that I've literally been in, not just heard about. And I'm curious if you think that's a if there's any potential for that here.
Yeah and no. I'm not a lawyer, and legal issues are different, and copyright infringement is different country to country.
I don't think any of us have a valid, strong answer. This is just our wild guesses based on our very bad understanding of it.
If you copy a load of stuff and you put it into a piece of work, then you can get done for copyright infringement. That's the basic general gist of it. And when you get code down from something like ChatGPT, you can search that code and you can find it. You know, there are cases where I've done a function in ChatGPT to test it, and the code I've got down, I'm like, that looks suspiciously like some code I read on a Unity tutorial ages ago. And you look, and and the funny thing is, code has a signature. Even when you go and use somebody else's coding style, and you're using, you know, particular case sensitivity and all the rest, that's your coding signature. And sometimes you can see that. In fact, in Unity, you can probably tell who wrote that code at Unity, because their coding standards, as far as their tutorials are concerned, are pretty lax. Because you can see M underscores here, you can see underscores there, you can see lowercase, uppercase. So you can tell some of the signatures that's there. And I'm sure this is the case. Now, we have obfuscating tools now that take away a lot of that signatureness and, you know, refer every variable into a couple of letters or something like that. Now, with something like ChatGPT, I could see it going, okay, here's the code. I'm going to take every variable. I'm going to know the context of that variable. So I know it's a timer, and I know it's a timer that does this. I can rewrite it to say this. And I can change the signature of that to just be underscore, to remove M underscore. I know everybody wants me to do that in my code. Or remove the underscore completely and have it in a Microsoft coding standard or anything like that. So there is a case of some of this stuff will start rewriting and producing code off it. Now, does that change the fact you copied that and just had the tool obfuscate it across? The other case is there's a case of, can you even copyright the code that gets generated? Because it wasn't generated by a person. And there's legal cases going through now saying only people can produce this thing. There's a case of a photograph that was taken by a gorilla. And this gorilla took a selfie. He basically stole the camera and took a selfie of himself. And then the photographer used that image, and when somebody else copied that image and put it somewhere else, he sued them because he said, you can't just steal my image. And it went to court because the defendant, the person that took the image, said, well, no, you didn't take the image, a gorilla did. And the court turned around and said, well, okay, it has to be a person for it to get this thing. And I believe PETA got involved as well, the animal protection group. It's a whole thing. I don't know what the result was in the end, but it's an interesting case to be looked at. And will AI go that same route? And a lot of people have been talking about copyright infringement, real usage and all the rest. And they're saying, is that case precedent for AI? Now, funnily enough, part of the case did relate to, well, it has to be a human. It can't be an animal that took it. Well, AI is not an animal, but is it the person or the animal that takes precedent in that particular legal precedent? So it's a thing that's evolving. So there's no real right or wrong answer at the moment because it is going through the courts in various locations to work out what it's going to come out at. But yeah, there you go. That's the long and short of it. I'm not a lawyer. Don't sue me.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer either. In the animal case, I'm sure why PETA is involved and others probably, if the court is somehow able to hint or indicate that the gorilla is a person, therefore has the copyright, then we could then say, well, people can't own a chimpanzee. They're a person. You can't own a person. That's illegal. That's slavery. And it's an interesting concept because if one were to say you cannot copyright AI stuff because a person has to make it, well, who made it? And then somebody will eventually try to argue that the AI is then should be considered a person, similar to how people have argued successfully in this country, at least, that corporations are people in terms of certain laws. And I think that's, an interesting thing we, as people who are citizens of the world should probably watch out for, because it could be dangerous precedents that are hard to untwine once they're legally set. So I won't go further because it's a debate.
We're going to get AIs that own corporations that are people.
The AIs can have this debate for us.
The AI won't be a person, it'll just own a person in the corporation.
Before we move on to the CES stuff, I know you want to get to it. There is actually at the moment AI being used to identify animal language. And it's a massive topic, and people should look it up. It's fascinating. But they're using their AI to listen to dogs barking, cats, all the rest of it, and seeing what that animal is doing at the time, and then study that as a data set to create language based on animals. Now, another thing I was reading about was the fact they're also using images and video, because a lot of animals communicate in aptitude or the language that they're using, body language, etc. That's what they use to communicate as well as their vocalness. So there's loads of AI being used on data sets in that so that we can talk to animals.
That'd be interesting.
So as soon as you can start talking to that gorilla and ask it its motivation for taking the selfie, maybe that legal precedent will change. But there you go.
And we'll
that's just something coming off.
Yeah, I could see it happening though, and coming in the new eyeglasses. Right.
Yeah, talk to your dog. There's a show on Netflix called Futurism, which talks about where we will be with certain things in certain times. It has all the things from what we're going to do with dead people all the way through to will we talk to our animals and ownage of pets. Will it, when this actual thing gets put through, will actually owning a dog be illegal because your dog can now talk to you?
I guess it all depends on what we find out dogs are actually saying.
Yeah.
What are they really just saying? Like, let me out and give me food. I'm gonna poop on the floor now, or is there more to it?
Or the tennis ball is my friend. Stop throwing my friend.
That's why I keep bringing it back. What's wrong with you? Why are you trying to get rid of it?
Oh man,
see, you keep losing this, you clumsy git. Stop throwing it away.
I think that's an interesting thought experiment, certainly about what the animals are thinking. Dogs are a special class. We've bred them to love us more than they love other dogs for the most part, and that's going to be, I mean, you can think about the ethics of breeding animals to love humans. It works. I love dogs, so I think we're best friends and all that. But it's fun thought experiments for sure.
Yeah, you could see it in 50 years' time where people are writing books going, well, the previous humans used to own pets. And and once we found out what they could say, and we were manipulating them into thinking that we were better than their own kind. And yeah, it's going to be.
And the book
Cancel culture 3.0.
Running the world once they can talk. They start taking over.
President Bowser.
President Pooches. Before we jump to CES, the one last thing I want to mention on this Mid-Journey thing was like, even if you're not sure what to do with it, if you're just looking for like menu screens and splash screens, it's been great for that. I use this one right here as my game over scene. So you die, bam, got a nice picture of dead robots. Just scroll it over. And I think it's super handy. So go check it out if you haven't already. It's just go to Mid-Journey. It's totally free. But there was some other cool stuff going on, and I think we should probably start talking a little bit about that. So CES is that Consumer Electronics Show. It happens every year, and I missed it again, and Dave missed it too. But it's going on live right now, right, Dave?
Yeah, it's down the road from us.
Close. I feel bad. It's like a 4-hour drive. I would gladly go there, but I always forget. And next year, we're definitely going to go. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the cool stuff that you've seen coming out, though?
Yeah, so every year I do a little dive on it. Now, obviously, it's not over yet, so people are still announcing things coming out, and so this is going to be a sort of day 0, day 1, day 2 sort of thing coming out. Now, you've popped up, so we'll start with some of the foldables. Obviously, there's still tons of foldables coming out from phones to laptops. One laptop in particular that came out was one that's all screen, so both the base and the top are screens, and you can lay a half keyboard on top of it to form a keyboard to type on. But one of the novel things about this is you could turn the screen up and put it out so it's completely out in front of you, and then use the keyboard itself. So suddenly you have a wide screen in front of you with a keyboard, or like they've got there, you could have it as a tall screen in front of you, so portrait and widescreen mode with the keyboard off to the side. That's one of the laptops that came out. Obviously, there's loads of foldables. The creases are getting better and better and better, i.e. you can't see them more and more and more. And some of the images that were coming out were quite interesting. As I think we were talking about previously before the show, creases have always been the downside of these foldables. As they move away, some of us might get more into them.
Yeah, I assume they're just going to get better each iteration. I know the first ones were pretty bad. Second one seemed better, but still a little bit. And I assume it's going to disappear completely soon.
In game-related stuff, obviously Razer has a lot of new laptops out. That some of them have the i9 in them. So there's going to be more and more powerful laptops, but that's nothing new. There's new powerful laptops. Big deal. A lot more switching going on, where you can switch modes from like 4K at 144 hertz or HD at 240 hertz. So there's a lot of this switching going on, and that might relay back into how you develop your games. It's something to be aware of, that when you're targeting for particular games, there's going to be this sort of thing going on where people can switch on the fly as the game goes on. So that's something to note from CES as far as that's concerned. moving on from sort of laptops and stuff, Dell is still trying to put across their streaming solution, where they basically enable you to stream to any monitor or TV you have in your house the game that you're playing, and then you just take the controller around. So when your wife kicks you out of the living room because she wants to watch what she wants to watch, and you can go game in your office, not that that ever happens to me, you can just pick up your controller and stream to the other room and then go and do it in there. Now, this obviously isn't the streaming from the cloud sort of thing. It's a server solution that sits in your house that you can then go and use in other rooms. And they're showing off a brand new controller. It's very much looks a little bit more towards the PS controllers rather than the Xbox controllers, but it has so many capacitive touch areas on it that it's just ridiculous. The bumpers on the controller, you can scroll with the bumpers, and then it has a trackpad on the actual controller that you can scroll with and use, and then it has one on the front of the controller, so where you'd usually have your input for the like plugging it in, that is also a scroll wheel. Yeah, 2 different scroll wheels on that as well. So you don't need to go into your administrative mode to change your settings. Like when you're using a mouse that has different sensitivities that you can flip a button, it changes sensitivities. You'll be able to do that now with a scroll wheel on here. And there's 2 buttons on the back here because, again, with games, we're moving away from just having these buttons. There's also buttons for these fingers here as well now. As your 2, basically every finger you're going to have will have a button. Like soon, we're just going to get rid of the controller and just have things on our hands and be doing this in the air.
Well, and you got to put them on your feet too. Get some foot gloves.
Why not? I mean, you could do that at the moment. You could use the Microsoft adaptive stuff that they've done for accessibility and plug things in and suddenly use your feet and your hands and everything else you want to do, if you wanted to, because that's what it's built for people that don't have hands. So, but yeah, this was it's a controller that stood out to me as I was just like, why are there so many scroll options on this controller? So that's there coming out of CES as well. HyperX are joining the 3D printing revolution. So one of the things you're going to start seeing in 23 and 24 is ultra personalized components and items for your battle station that you're using in front of you. They're doing headphone stands that are customized, and they're doing keycaps as well, and a few other bits and pieces. But you'll be able to basically buy personalized keycaps. There's a lot of little cats that they were showing that people have keycaps, that little tiny 3D model cats and all the rest of it. Put them on your escape key. Anyone that's using that on the WASD, you're a lunatic. Yes, there you go. You got to escape.
I personally on my escape and a little speeder on my F5 to start, and then my Stargate print screen.
There you go. I have a lot of Portal keycaps with just somebody going in and somebody coming out on my keyboard for some reason.
Oh, nice! It's like I like it. The big one on the escape. It's made my escape is huge because it's a big giant snow globe, the Dalek in it. Yeah.
So, 3D printing and personalization is going to be a big push in some of the game spaces, especially when you look at, as there's so many streamers now. And a lot of times you're not just watching their screen and them, you've got a third-person camera that's sitting there watching them play, or you've got a camera above showing their keyboard. I think sometimes it's just to show they're not actually cheating, but there's a camera above showing the keyboard. So customizing their keyboard is going to be a big thing. Now, how will that affect us in the gaming development community? Not so much at the moment, because a lot of the peripherals that they're doing of this are sort of aesthetic, but you could start seeing that move towards customized mouse handles, customized keyboards, and all the rest of it, where they start getting really engrossed in. You could take your hand, you could scan your hand, and suddenly you've got a molded mouse to be using, so it's exactly the right size for your hand. You can see that trend coming when they start on these other trends where they go aesthetic, to just view how it looks to how it actually functions.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool. I can picture coming up with a couple of different keycaps. I wonder if streamers are going to start making them available too. It'd be like in their store.
Oh, yeah.
Go buy my keycap. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, as far as merch options are concerned, I'll talk to you after the show about it. But there is so many merch options for keycaps. I mean, if you ever watch Nick, who does the monkey stuff and his stream, Vimlock, you'll notice that he sometimes brings up a little 3D printed monkey. And that's because he said to me, I've got this voxel monkey in 3D. Can you print it for me? And I took it into my 3D printing area and just basically 3D printed all these monkeys for him in different sizes and different colors. And now he brings them on stream and all the rest of it because it's his brand. And you could see that happening here where 3D solutions where people are starting to provide the options for you to print at their location and do it. And now printers are so cheap. Why everybody doesn't have a 3D printer, I don't know. They're only like $99 now for a really cheap one. Yeah, it's rubbish, but it will produce something not too bad for you. Don't go mental like me and spend thousands on stuff. But yeah, so there's options there. And if you are looking at Kickstarter or anything like that, could start having these services coming out. So there you go. I'm trying to put it all back into gaming in some way, shape, or form. Some of it's not going to be. But that's the sort of laptop accessory thing that I've seen so far. Moving on, and Andrew, Jason, jump in if you've got anything else on this. Looking at IoT in the world, we'll run through the stuff that's not game related really quickly so we can get back to the game related stuff. But IoT, Matter is a massive thing this year. If you haven't got Matter listed against your IoT product, you don't exist anymore. Matter, for people that don't know, is basically a cross-communication standard between all people creating IoT devices. Sony's on board, Apple's on board, Samsung's on board, Google's on board. Every product you get in IoT is going to start having this Matter stamp on it to say that it can talk to itself. And if you were an early IoT adopter like me, this means you're changing all your IoT devices over, because my wife is having a nightmare with IoT sometimes because I suddenly decide everything has to be automated in a different way. Well, now it all talks the same thing. She's like, what am I talking to today to get this thing to do that? Now, I've consolidated most of that stuff, and I have a lot of personal server stuff coming on board, and I'll do a video on that at some point. But Matter now takes that ability to the next level, and Google's actually showing customizability on their viewable devices, so their hubs, that you can customize your own dashboard to control your house, and options like the IFTTT standard, IFTTT, to be able to say, this thing does that, it does that. So there are rule standards coming out against Matter. So it's an interesting way that it's going. How it relates back into gaming, well, if you're in the location-based entertainment industry, Matter means you can incorporate more items into your location for your experience you're actually creating. And
it also is how you're going to be controlling your RGB lights when you're playing games in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Because eventually they're going to, it's going to all switch over to that. I mean, I'm glad that it's happened, because over the last 20 years, there's been a bunch of different protocols. Everybody's kind of fighting, and then you have to use some sort of an integration to get them all to work. Like I use Home Assistant right now to get everything working, because there's so many different protocols that combined with Google. I think it's going to be really nice once everybody has kind of transitioned over to this same standard, and everything can just kind of work together without it being a giant pain in the ass, and without having to have a bunch of devices that convert from one protocol to another, which I've had in the past. And now it's down to mostly just Hue stuff and things that work with this, which is very, very, very cool. So.
Yeah. And the next couple of things, and I'll get onto some TVs. And Andrew just posted in our private chat about a TV that comes up, which I've got in my list, which is awesome sauce. The IoT stuff, Samsung is now using blockchain technology for the communication standard between some of their stuff. So everything in your house will talk to itself on a private blockchain. Don't know any more details than that, but that's coming up. So if you're interested in blockchain technology, that's being put into it. MUI, so MUI, is a company that's coming out with a wooden box thing that you can actually draw on, and it basically controls you. It's like a hub that's got a touchscreen interface, but it looks like you're drawing on wood. It's pretty tidy.
This one? No, this is.
Yeah, that's it. So it's so the scribble you see there is when they're putting up the timer, they draw on the piece of wood and the lights light up behind it. So it's an incredibly thin veneer sort of thing that they've got in front of the screen. I just thought it was quite funky for people that don't want to have a cyberpunk sort of living environment like I do, where everything drives the wife crazy. This sort of thing actually makes it a little bit neater and can incorporate into furniture. So you'll see some of this stuff coming into furniture in future. years.
Yeah,
as it
I could
becomes
see
better.
this being even on like in a fancy car, right? Like the wood grain in a car.
On gaming related subjects to do with this sort of thing, we just mentioned RGB. Nanoleaf is coming out with some more products to do with behind screen lighting. And what it does is it actually has a camera, and it, as everybody does at CES now, they're like, it uses AI. And it basically associates what's in your screen to how the colors around your screen behind or your Nanoleaf are basically going to be communicating with their really 1990s looking hub that they've got going on. But yeah, so that's a thing that they're doing. It's a little tiny, well, I say it's a little tiny camera. It's actually quite, it's the size of a Logitech webcam that sits hung out from the screen, looking back at the screen, which I would hate to have hanging above my screen. But
yeah,
anyway.
that's what like the Govee ones do for their backlights. They have the same thing. I have one in the box. It's like the backlights back there in the strips, and they have that little camera that reads the screen and then tries to match. It's interesting. Nanoleaf's got a lot more complicated product, I guess, because it's not just the strips and the two lights, but it's not really that much more complicated, it seems like.
And they've got switches and all sorts of things in CES. So let's move on to TVs, because I know Andrew just posted one, and this TV was pretty cool. Displaced TV. Battery powered, so it's completely wireless. It's got some chunky ass batteries that slide into the side of the actual TV. Like, they are chunky batteries that basically go into
it's supposed to run about 7 days nonstop.
Yeah.
Right, on the battery power.
So if you're looking for the ultimate in wireless TV, there you go. They've stuck it to a window, which I'm sure the hotel was super happy about. And it's got these chunky batteries. There you go. There you go. Some big ass chunky batteries sitting in the side of it. And it's got 4 of those that it uses.
Does that mean you can just replace one and like at times so you can keep watching while you're charging one of the 4?
You would hope so, wouldn't you?
They got the TV on while they're doing it, and they're popping.
Yeah,
them
that's
out,
true.
so.
Yeah.
I have to say, what excites me about I love when I go to my friend's house. They got the TV. It's all wired through the wall, etc. My brother did it. Everyone who does that costs some money. It takes some time. It's a hassle and a half, right? You got, and then that's where your TV is. And oftentimes you look at houses or something, and it's like, oh, well, I guess that's where I'm going to put the TV because that's where the hole is. This is cool. I don't watch that much TV, but I like to have one around. I'm sure. What if I don't? This is my room, so I don't have one right now. But when I have a house, I would love to have a TV around, and I don't want wires showing, and I also don't want to have to worry about putting a hole in the wall. This is perfect, and I can't wait for more and more stuff like this, where it's just like, yeah, no, the battery lasts a long time. You don't have to worry about it, and it's just there. It's just phenomenal.
Let's take it to the next level, though. Imagine it's touchscreen. Imagine the tablet that you could carry into the airport. It's a tablet. I'm good. I'm a tablet. I'm going to take it on the plane with me and just watch it on it. Giant TV. Yeah, it's my phone.
Yeah. It's that wireless one. It's still got a ways to go, though. I mean, you want to be able to hook up to your stereo and everything else. You're gonna have to something is gonna have to come out that supports all of that shit, right? Like,
yeah, Matter standard. There you go. Job done. Yeah. I mean, my wife, I sit with a tablet suspended above my head to try and let myself fall to sleep and to trick my insomnia. Great. She can't get away. This is a tablet as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to put it everywhere. Literally wandering around it. I'm waiting for the first video of somebody that literally is walking down the street, watching their program, holding this in their hands as they walk through London or something like that. I am dying for that YouTube video that comes out. I'm not going to do it because I'm not that type of person, but somebody's going to do it, and it will be fantastic.
The promise of 5G was supposed to be devices like this that don't need a hub. They don't need a box. I don't think 5G's worked out that way. If you ask me, my phone is still slow all the time. And so I think that's failed. But yeah, I would imagine that one day that type of system would be completely wireless so that you could take it wherever. You could just, and maybe it would be a foldable. I mean, why not make it a foldable one day where instead of a TV, it just
folds into a suitcase with a handle?
Yeah, you bring it up into your TV. It's completely wireless. Everything's wireless.
Screen's nice and covered so you can move it around.
Yeah, well, there's that monitor now, isn't there, that you can actually pull it out and adjust it and everything. So, yeah, rollable TVs. Samsung's been doing rollables for 10 years. So, actually, I think they've been doing it for longer than 10 years.
That's step 2 then. They just need a battery in that rollable base, and you've got exactly that.
Job done. It sits as just a sound bar that's quite long that you can just have music, and then when you're like, I want to watch TV, you pull it out and it's done. Now, I'm one of those people that hacks my house to pieces, putting wires everywhere. If you go into my living room, you sit there, the TV has no wires going to it because it's all going in the back, the HDMIs, the network, the Ethernet adapters, all the rest of it I put in there. And then I have a 7.1 surround sound system that's all built into the walls. It's not even, they're in-wall speakers. And I built it all myself. I put it all in. It took me ages and was an absolute nightmare. I'd rather not do that. So these things are starting to move away from that. And I remember when I used to sell hi-fis, paid my way through university way back in the 90s. And the one thing we used to say is, don't buy wireless speakers for your surround speakers. The lag will kill you. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. So wireless speakers are a perfectly optional thing for that, except for the
I've switched
purists.
to all wireless now. I switched over to a Sonos system and gave away my receiver and all my giant speakers and sub and all that stuff. It was taking up so much space constantly, and I have babies that were constantly trying to climb them. It's never fun having babies climb on speakers.
Now we just need the smart people to finish figuring out wireless power so that batteries aren't even needed, and it just works.
And we have seen that at previous CESs, the wireless power stuff. It's trying to get that through the standards agencies. Like, are you sure it's not frying me? It's always been a thing. But yeah, I'm dying for that as well.
Fire hazards, yeah.
VR, for instance, the ability to charge wirelessly on VR, and with these new standards like 6E for Wi-Fi, you're going to start getting it where you've got that powerful PC in the corner, no cords, but you're getting that crisp view on your screen, and it's not going to last for 1 hour. But yeah, it's coming. So just to finish off the TV roundup, to talk about TV series, HBO is just about to launch Last of Us from the TV game. So that series is about to launch, and they did mention that in one of the presentations from Sony. So there you go, if you're into that sort of thing. And on that subject, there is the film for Gran Turismo, the movie, coming out. And that will be coming out this year, I think it is, in the summer. So yeah, the impressive thing about Gran Turismo, the movie, is not the game being made into a movie. I don't care about that. It's probably going to be a weird thing anyway. But it's the fact that the camera work on this particular movie is incredibly impressive because they're using all these next generation cameras. So it's something to look into and look at how they do the camera placement and all the rest of it. But there you go. So Gran Turismo, the movie, coming out, bringing it back into games. So moving on to some weird ones. There was a makeup company that built a lipstick that has an accessibility adapter. So people that have shaky hands or have accessibility issues with their hands can now apply lipstick, and it uses an AI to recognize where the lipstick should be placed, and it maneuvers the lipstick to do that. Incredibly impressive. It's great to see this sort of thing coming out for accessibility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's awesome sauce. I love this sort of thing. When Bose and stuff have started to do some of their stuff towards accessibility, it's lovely to see people starting to help people that have missed out on a lot of these opportunities. And that's why when Microsoft released their adaptive controller, everybody was super hyped about it because, I mean, you've got groups like Special Effect in the UK, which is a great charity. If people are interested in giving charities this year, Special Effect in the UK, who helps people that have accessibility issues, children in particular, play video games. So there you go. So I love this stuff. On that point, keeping in the makeup and beauty sort of thing, Neutrogena has developed a 3D printed gummy. And this 3D printed gummy, basically, I didn't get into all the details, but it's something to do with improving your health. And it's 3D printed because it looks at your own makeup, how you are, and 3D prints something that it thinks will help you. So it's probably layering the different amount of substrate for each part of the 3D printed gummy. There you go. And again, they've got AI written all over it because every company this year will have AI next to their name. If they don't, the investors won't invest in them. So you loved the metaverse before, you're going to love AI now. It's on everything.
NFTs are gone and AI is in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. NFTs were so last year until they're not. And AI is back in full force. I remember when AI done its investor push ages ago as a big marketing, got to have AI and everything. It's back again, and it's doing it properly this time around. So yeah, so that's gummies that are done by that. On HealthKick as well, Withings. If you don't know Withings, they do absolutely incredible looking smartwatches. Withings, if you want to sponsor me, I love your products. Give me more. So I use their watch, I use their weighing scale and all the rest of it. It's great health-related products. They're actually coming out with, wait for it, a urine tester. You put this device into your toilet bowl. Yeah, finally. I want to know what my urine's made up of.
I'm going to send this to you and say, make a video on it.
Yeah, and I won't. But so I want to send me the other stuff. Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. It's a device you put into your toilet bowl that you pee on, and it will tell you what you need to add to your nutrition, and it will give you a health and wellness makeup of that. Now,
how
obviously,
does it tell you? Where does it come through your watch or something?
Withings actually has an app on your phone, and that app, it's free as well. It's not like those rings that now you have to pay a ridiculous amount. It actually takes all the information from the watch, from the weighing scale, and all the rest, and amalgamates that into give you scores and trackable data that you can obsess over for hours on end and bore your wife with when you buy all these ridiculous products and then start using them everywhere. I have a lot of them because I love tech everywhere. So yeah, it's a thing now. Urine testing at home, great stuff. Don't
that's just announced and coming soon.
It's coming soon,
I think, very soon. Okay. The interesting thing about that, and I think the smart tech on that, is that it knows who's peeing on it based on the angle of your pee.
Oh, really?
If you share at home,
that's awesome.
You can all use it at the same time. Well, not at the same time. Don't cross the stream. But it knows.
I don't know how you use the toilet at your house, Andrew.
and it's got an internal, like it's got cartridges inside, and once it gets used, it actually moves to the next cartridge, and it has to be replaced every 8 weeks or something. And they, because it's the cleaning supplies it comes with and all this other interesting tech beyond just the health benefits. The tech that goes into making that actually work is very intriguing.
It's fascinating. And you can't really relate this back to game tech as much, but people have seen, if you haven't seen them, in some urinals, I think it's in Korea or Japan, they actually have games you can play by peeing in certain areas on the urinal to play a game while you're in a bar or a club. So there is game-related stuff in this. It's not just weird stuff coming out of CES. So you might find that soon. Gamification in the fitness space is massive. If, as Jason would say, a lot of time I spend with clients, it's not on game stuff essentially, but it's on gamification. Companies looking to train their people, looking to gamify their products. They give me a ring and I help them work that out and work that through. So you can imagine gamification in fitness because it's everywhere. So if you're looking for work in the games industry, it doesn't have to be in the games industry. You can be building VR for XR training or something like that. And so you could gamify somebody to say, right, okay, drink more water, and then gamify the output on the app to say, okay, are you doing that? Do better, little Pokemon or Tamagotchi or whatever shows. But there we go. So that's peeing. And I'm just going to do one more crazy thing and then I'll go on to Sony. There's a bird feeder that uses AI and it uses a camera. So when birds go to your bird feeder, they just eat. But now you've got a webcam that actually watches them, and it can basically use AI and image detection and image analysis to work out what breed of bird is there. So what bird is in front of them. And it will tell you, you have a sparrow that's just started eating off your thing. So there you go. Bird feeder with AI.
Kind of combination. Like they take something that probably relatively simple, doing the detect. I mean, not simple, but simple to, if you're using an API to determine it, and then just give them a little bit of extra cool info to make the product worth Probably 10 times what you would normally buy a bird feeder for, is my guess.
10 times, like 1,000 times more than you buy a feeder for.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I paid $20. Yeah.
So now we're past all the crazy stuff. Let's move on to some of the more game-related stuff. Sony was out and about doing its thing with a big presence. They've got several things. The first thing to talk about is VR2. They have the VR2 headset coming out for the Sony PlayStation. Improved in every particular location. Nothing really to mention there. Just everything you use, the screens, the compatibility, the interface, everything's improved. They've got 30 games being listed for it. Interesting ones are Gran Turismo again, because they're going to blatantly be cross-promoting that with their film, and Beat Saber. So even though I thought Oculus bought the rights to them, well, Facebook bought the rights to Beat Saber, it's in the PlayStation lineup for the VR2. So there you go. They're doing they're keeping going on this. It's weird that Xbox hasn't come out with their own VR alternative, because Sony's really taking it away at the moment. I think Microsoft's looking a lot of times at the fact that a lot of people are going wireless and they're going with the Oculus 2 and that sort of thing. Yeah. But as Sony starts adapting this sort of thing, maybe they start making it a wireless product in the next couple of years. They'll start taking a good share of the amount of people that are buying into VR. So it's something to keep an eye on. If you're doing game development and you're doing VR development in particular, this is one that could come out. Now, again, still wired, so it's limited in what it can do, unless you're a crazy person like me and they hang from the ceiling and you can pull them down and they adjust as you move around your room. Most people don't have that. But this will be wireless soon. I could see it becoming its own product. I mean, you saw the PlayStation Portable. This could become something that you could wire and unwire. Oculus does it now. You can wire and unwire your Oculus 2. So, sorry, Facebook Rift or whatever the hell it's called now.
I believe it's a Quest 2.
Oh, that's it, Quest 2. I should know.
Quest
I've got
Pro.
Like 4 of them.
Yeah, I wonder if Microsoft's HoloLens, like, if the fact that they're already working on that makes them less interested in getting into another VR AR product.
It's
like
in particular the fact they haven't come out with a companion to the Xbox product. So they've got VR headsets and partnerships for tons of PC stuff, but they haven't really gone for this is your Xbox in VR. And people have been curious about that for quite a while. You know, will they not go that route? Will they steer clear of it? There's a lot of partnerships that have to come through that to have, you know, very like exclusive games and stuff like that that make you sell that particular headset. So the fact that Sony haven't thrown it away like they've done for a lot of their accessories, and they've actually come out with a second product that is an improvement on their first product, does indicate that the industry is still interested in some of those. Moving on, there was a lot of talk about Unreal Engine in everything. Like they were talking about Unreal Engine in the camera system they were using. They were talking about Unreal Engine for the virtual stages that they were talking about, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And in their car. So Sony showed the Aflefa or whatever, AFEELA, I think it was called. I've got it written down here somewhere.
Oh yeah, EELA.
So they brought loads of partners on for this. They had Honda talking about it. They had Qualcomm in it, because there are Qualcomm chips in everything to do with this car. And they talked about the Unreal Engine. And the Unreal Engine is powering a good amount of parts to this car. Now, they're talking about a digital revolution as far as cars concerned. That's to do with how the entertainment is done in the car and also its self-driving capabilities. And that's where Qualcomm came in and where sensors came in and all the rest. Because Sony has a big sensor business. If you didn't know, they don't just make games. They don't just make TVs. Now they make cars. But yeah, Honda's going to produce the car. Qualcomm's going to be all over it. And Unreal is all over this. Now, you'll notice that Unity also has a whole car and whole automotive division to do with producing Unity game engine stuff for the car industry. Unreal is now in this market. They're now producing things to do with this. Now, you might ask yourself, why are they doing that? You know, my car has its own infotainment system. I have Android Auto and I have Apple CarPlay. Apple is taking a lead on this quite heavily, and Google's now playing catch up. Apple is trying to sell the whole infotainment system that comes with your car powered by Apple. And that's everything from the engine talking back to the thing. So when everybody's talking about the Apple car, what they're really talking about is the fact that Apple is taking all the sensor information coming in from your car and producing a system around it. Now, Google's going to try and get in on that action, and Sony is now producing something that's going to try and get in with that action with Unreal. Because if Apple basically takes a piece of every pie. You look at the VW on all their electric cars. The infotainment system is terrible. I know. I own a VW ID4. The infotainment system, it's thought of as the audio in a game that we're producing. It's always the last thing, the bastard child that comes at the very end, and it shouldn't at all. So cars cheap out on the infotainment system. Now they're all going, actually, what if we just licensed Apple products? And that's a massive industry. If every car uses that license for that particular thing, it's a big deal. So Unity saw this coming. Unity got in on the action, not just for designing the cars in a VR environment and using CAD software. You could import CAD into Unity, but also the idea of building an infotainment system. And now to see Unreal doing this shows that it's a viable product. It's a thing that if you're looking at the game industry and going into it, there is other avenues in the industry, like I've spoken before, that have to do with building game engines for these sort of products. So it's a very interesting thing that I'm seeing coming up. And there's a couple of other cars that came out with AR systems to do with them. So there's a car, and I'm going to screw this up. I think it was Ram, actually, the Ram pickup truck. One of the things they showed was a heads-up display using augmented reality to display people that you couldn't see. They put a highlight around them. So it's like the outline shader in your games. They're basically showing that. And you know that's all done with a graphics engine.
Yeah.
Therefore, if you're looking at these sort of jobs, these sort of things are available to you.
That makes sense why because I mean, to do that well, you're going to need something like Unreal or Unity, some sort of good rendering engine. Because I know you've worked on integrated devices in the past, and usually the software and the SDKs for it are 10 plus years old and crappy and a pain in the ass to work with. And that's why you get those bad systems. Like you said, the Audi one's pretty bad. And I know, like, I had the Microsoft Sync stuff in my car before for the longest time, and I that ran off like Windows CE, and it was on cars from the 2010s. It's not like it's old; like they're still selling it, and it was run off of old ass stuff, and it would constantly cause problems and be a big. I mean, the thing used to drive me nuts. I have to factory reset it like every other month. It was that bad. I could totally see it. So there's definitely some room there, and I could see it as career opportunities for people too that are in game development, writing software for cars, especially the entertainment part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just think how often your game crashes, though, whether it's Unity or Unreal Engine, and you're like, "Oh, my car's going to crash." But
my car used to crash way more than my engine. So I mean, the infotainment system.
Yeah,
it drove
mine
has completely insane.
Yeah.
It was terrible. Android Auto is the only thing I use now. So switch to that, and they're going to have to do much better than that to ever get me to switch to something else.
And these big players are looking at this to say, okay, don't even bother with your infotainment system. We're just going to be your infotainment system. And I mean, you look at Tesla and you look at Rivian. They don't have, I can't remember what Rivian does, but I know Tesla, you couldn't use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay the last time I checked. And there's a reason for that. It's a big section of budget. It's a big section of, they want to have everything designed in their particular language, and they don't want to overlay that with a CarPlay or an Android. But now Android and a CarPlay are saying, right, no, we want to be that section, and forget about doing it yourself. We'll do it. So there's good opportunities in the industry at the moment in these areas to make headways, to start with the complete R&D area, but just be prepared to do unit testing, because if it goes in a car, it's going to be unit tested to hell. Because
it's okay if it crashes. Ford already told me that. It's fine if it crashes and you have to factory reset it.
Yeah, while you're driving at 100 mile an hour down the freeway.
No, you gotta stop.
I mean
You gotta
65,
stop,
65.
pull over, turn the damn car off, factory reset the thing, wait for 5 minutes, and then you can hook your phone up and actually hear stuff.
Can you imagine you get
3 phones connected because a kid got in and connected their phone, so now your phone no longer works.
You need to do an update, and it'll be like the Steam updates takes forever to come down and then gets installed. You're like,
Oh yeah, you gotta
just
do that
wondered if
after
you're
you
going to work.
reset it every time. You got to rerun the updates. So much fun.
Yeah, got to update your SSD in your car. So yeah, so those sort of things are in there. Looking at, I've got a couple more things on Sony, but looking at the car, BMW came out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the most incredible display car you've ever seen in your life. This car is coated in color e-ink, and it can just change at a whim. It's pretty amazing. Let me hang on. I'll just
the innovation of the one that I saw before. I'd seen the black and white one, and I thought that is cool as shit. I can't wait until that's real or like available. Now it looks like they've made it better, huh?
Yeah. So this is real. Like they had this on stage. This isn't just a rendering in the background. This is real. So again, if you're a graphics designer, if you're a graphics engine programmer, all this sort of thing, this is running off an engine. Like you can start designing things. Audi recently talked about being able to play video games out of the headlights on a wall, which will never pass FEC. But this probably won't either. Can you imagine being distracted by a car that's got Hello Kitty waving to you as you're going down the road? Yeah, this is going to be the
self-driving cars because AI will be creating all these random images. You're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You'll talk to your car and it'll do a mid-journey chat GPT thing and just suddenly just displaying everything around your car. So this is a fantastic product on the car as well. And they had Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it was quite funny because he came out and went, I used to battle the machines and now I'm with them. It's like, okay, there's your cheesy line gone. Get off. Tell us about the car. But anyway, this is out. On Sony, Sony have their own version of the accessibility controller now that Microsoft did, which is awesome to see. So if you're looking at your video games for accessibility, something to take note of that these controllers are available and just know about them. How you incorporate them. You don't tend to have to alter your game for these accessibility controllers. They're more about enabling people to just use a controller. But it's worth noting and knowing about these things as they go out. So this is Sony's version of the accessibility controller. I don't know what will come out. When we see more video of it, we can talk about it more and about accessibility that you should be thinking about in your video games. Everything from differently abled to color blindness and all the rest. So yes, when your grocery car hits an e-ink car, nightmare.
If you bump into a color changing car, I'd be a little worried.
So that's accessibility. Now, Sony is also doing satellites now. They've got a satellite that they've just launched that you can rent. Anyone supposedly will be able to rent this thing. There's one satellite. How anybody's going to rent? But they're producing a lot more satellites, and you can actually control the camera on it. So you can ruin everybody's privacy issues by controlling a satellite to look at stuff on the Earth. Yeah, they're going to have more details on the consumer nature of it and how much you can rent it for, etc. down the line. But it's not game related, so I'm just going to skip past it. The other thing that Sony came up with is the virtual environments. Now they're getting into live events. How big they're going to get into this? Really not sure at the moment, but they had Nas X and they had a couple of other people come up to talk about them doing their concerts, but also having their concerts in a live environment. Now I'm going to use that terrible M word, and I do apologize for it. Metaverse, blah, multiplayer environment. Let's use that M word instead. But this is something you're going to see more and more of, especially this year. People talking about, why is your event not in a live real-time environment? So there's going to be a lot of jobs in the live real-time environment space. As some of the viewers who have watched me on this before, I've done a lot of work in live entertainment. I've done the Super Bowl, Lollapalooza, and most of the big events that happen across the US. I've been part of that, producing real-time engines, or using real-time engines to produce fantastic displays in the real world. So think augmented reality. This is now taking it to the other direction, virtual reality.
Nice.
So yeah, so if you're looking at virtual environments, you don't have to talk about the horrible M word, metaverse. You can talk about multiplayer. If you're looking to get into game industry, again, this is going to be a big job opportunity coming up.
Nice. Cool. Well, how many more cool things are there, Dave?
That's it. That's all I'm finishing with. I've
Okay.
exhausted the list. I'm sure there's a billion more things. Put in the comments what I missed, and then I can pick that up and we can talk about it when we do more of a summary in future video. If we do, I mean, if nothing else cool comes out,
maybe next week we can get Johnny on here and talk about some of the coolest stuff he saw too.
Excellent. Yeah,
I think it'd be fun to go over. And Andrew, you sent this over too, right?
Yeah, I like this. I've got a widescreen now, got last April, and the Odyssey I didn't buy it. First, I thought it was probably too big for my space, but also I wanted more height in the resolution. And this one, they just released this 57-inch, I think, which is freaking too big for anybody, but it's probably really fun. And it's two 8K monitors apparently side by side. So I think it does have the resolution that I would want after getting used to the high definition max and stuff, that I can't go back to a regular standard definition anymore. So I need that resolution. Otherwise, my brain doesn't like it. So that looked pretty cool. I have no idea how much it costs, but it's probably a few $1,000s. Yeah,
it's going to be a fortune.
Yeah.
And you're going to need a hefty GPU to, well, just buy yourself a 4090.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks, let's see, Odyssey. I'm curious. Yeah. I don't know. The 49-inch versions of that one go on sale relatively often. So maybe in a couple months, it'll be a reasonable price.
This is the third iteration. They don't change the name. So it's going to be very difficult to know which one you're buying. Because the first version is not the same as the second version. And there's issues with, like, I guess the lighting in the screen can be really wonky. This is OLED. So it's probably better. So if you are looking for an Odyssey and you see one on sale, make sure you're not buying the first version by accident.
Yeah, this one looks like this size is new, right? The 57-inch.
Yeah, the size is brand new, and I'm sure the price will not be low for a while. I think, for the sitting 10 feet away from the deck, I think the curve is of course designed so that you can kind of be in the center, and when you look to the side, it keeps that same distance. So you don't, like with some widescreens, especially the flat ones, if you look at the edges, you kind of have to lean over because it's literally further away. It's like 5-6 inches further away, and your eyes have to adjust to the distance. I think this is the one, or maybe it's their other Samsung one that has the math on whatever. It would be a full circle if you put them all around you, so that it's got that equal distance no matter where you're looking on the screen.
Wow.
Yeah, I really love my super ultra wide, so I highly recommend them. Before we wrap up, there was one question that somebody submitted a couple days ago in comments, and I had mentioned I wanted to answer it, but got busy with kids. And I figured maybe I'll just pop it up here and we can talk about it for a second. Just kind of ended. It was a comment from a 17-year-old that I thought was kind of interesting. And it said, let's zoom this in a lot so it's more visible. There we go. As a 17-year-old game developer who's going to college next year, I'm extremely nervous for the future of programmers' jobs. I was planning on majoring in computer science / game development, but I'm worried that I'll be learning information that will be useless in a few years' time. I guarantee that at least 50% of people that go into CS next year will have switched their major. I think that's unrelated, though, but we'll talk about it. And it says, I've spent the last year and a half studying my heart out of GameDev, even recently published my first Steam game. What's your input on this? I truly am panicking. So it seems like they're getting ready to go into college, worried about what it is they're going to get out of that CS degree, and worried about, I guess, just the future in general. When I read through this, though, I mean, when I got to the part where it said I recently published my first Steam game, my fear for this person dropped drastically. Realize like they're actually actively doing quite a bit and going through the entire process. I don't think that they're going to have any problems at all. Like I think if you're 17 and you're publishing your own Steam game, you're probably going to be relatively solid. And the fear and concern is probably just a side effect of you actually being actively thinking about what it is you're doing with your future and caring. It's not necessarily a problem. But I'm curious, what do you guys think on this? And you guys some just general advice for this guy?
Depends. Was it tic-tac-toe?
Well, it was a Steam game. I assume it was.
Game, yeah. No, exactly. Look, you're going to go when you start off university or college or whatever, and you're on a 3-year course or a 4-year course or anything like that. Things are going to change if you're trying to do the bleeding edge. It's just the nature of the game. But the fundamentals of what you learn on how to learn will get you the experience you need. Like there are principles in programming that haven't changed for decades.
For 50, 60, 70 years.
You're going to hopefully, if you've got decent teachers, they're going to teach you that sort of thing. They're also going to teach you how to work in groups and how to do things that you possibly wouldn't do if you just studied at home and tried to put out something on your own. There's elements of those fundamentals that you will take into your job. I still use principles that I learned at university, and trust me, you can see the gray hair. It was a long time ago. You don't have to worry. You will learn stuff that's going to help. And also, unfortunately, we're still in that point where a lot of games companies, and it's starting to become less and less, still filter people by the fact that they've got a degree or they've done a course or not, because it doesn't get to the person who's actually doing the hiring. It has to go through HR first. So sometimes you're doing it just for the piece of paper that's going to say you've done it. That's not all the case, and I'm glad to see that a lot of companies are moving away from doing that. But there is an option there. But yeah, think of it this way. It's not going to be wasted because the fundamentals aren't really going to change.
Yeah. And on the 50% of people dropping out or switching, I fully expect that because, and it's, I think, largely just caused by people not knowing what it is. The people that are dropping out are not ones who've already been studying and published a Steam game. They're the ones who heard that you make a lot of money making programs or writing code or making games, and they like to play games. So why not? And they've never actually done any, development or thinking about it.
Yeah,
so
that hasn't changed. I remember sitting in sitting in the auditorium at university back in the 90s, and the place being full of people that were just about to study this course, and they're all super excited because there was a brand new computer science lab with all those brilliant Unix machines, and everybody was super chuffed to go and be doing it. And half of the people went into the first programming class and went, "Oh, no. This is not what I expected." I remember somebody coming up to me and saying, "I've done a whole Excel Word course and all the rest because they thought that would help them." And you're just like, "Oh no, you don't, just forget all that stuff and start learning programming, start learning fundamentals, start learning functional language, object orientation languages, and all the rest of it." So yeah, a lot of people come in there and they're just like, as soon as they get, especially when they get to their compiler theory class, they're like, "Oh no, this is not fun. I'm out." So obviously that depends if you're doing comp ski or you're doing game dev in university. But a lot of people will drop out just because it ain't easy. And a lot of people look at it and go, "Oh, I want to build video games. That looks super, super fun." And they don't realize the grind that goes into it. So yeah, you'll always lose a lot of people.
Andrew, you got any thoughts on this one?
I think go get. I don't see programming jobs going away. Computer science jobs are not going away. They're always going to be high paid. There's going to be a hell of a lot more of them in the future. This AI stuff is only going to make them more and more specialized, which means you're going to get that sweet, sweet cash. So do it. And honestly, most people don't actually use the degree they get. That's just a common thing. But having a degree opens doors and gives you more opportunities. Even if you end up teaching high school, usually you need a degree for that. So, doesn't matter what your degree is in, you just need to have one, so.
Yeah. I mean, somebody has to integrate that AI into everything. It's not going to do it itself.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah. And advance it to the next thing. It's not where it's going to be. Where it is in 30 years is, it's going to be like those old AT&T commercials. We are going to get little bits right and a hell of a lot wrong. And in 30 years, we'll look back and laugh at the stream about all the silly things we were talking about. And Google will be like, nah, you're still using a search engine.
Do you say 30 years? Oh, I'm going to be
alive.
I'll be long dead by then.
No.
It's okay. We'll have an AI version of you, Dave.
Yeah.
I'll either be dead or I'll be heavily retired by then. So, yeah. I'm not going to care about
it. We'll have an AI version of you. It'll be fine.
That's
it's just whether or not you're getting a royalty off of it.
but will it have the same sarcasm and wit?
It would have more. We'll turn it up.
We'll turn it up a notch. I don't know. I don't know if there is more. Yeah, I don't know if there is more.
And then people can vote on the sarcasm level in chat and turn it up and down dynamically. Perfect.
That would be awesome. We could do that now. People can put money in or something, to put those membership things or whatever they're called on YouTube. Turn Dave's sarcasm up a notch, and I'll just
super chat.
Super chat my
just
sarcasm.
Pretend that you're AI the whole time.
I probably am. My fear is that the robot will when they say show that you're not a human and you have to press those buttons, it's going to get more and more sophisticated. Eventually it will turn around and go, no, you're not a human, because my wife calls me a robot all the time. So
the day that you wake up and find out that you really are a robot.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. No, it would surprise me a little bit because, the arthritis wouldn't be there, I'm just a really crappy robot.
Like that. Cool. Well, all right. Thanks, guys, for coming out. And I wanted to say thanks to everybody for joining us in chat. Please hit the thumbs up button, drop comments below if you got any thoughts about the stuff we've been talking about, or if there's anything cool at CES that we didn't know about or share yet, or in this AI stuff. There's probably lots of cool stuff. So if you're really interested to see that. And you guys have any last second things you want to share or send people to go check out?
No, I've still got loads of videos going up. So if you want to see more videos on weird niche stuff with Unity and how to do the stuff you didn't think you could do, then go to my channel and check it out because they're all there.
You should subscribe because you got unique videos that you can't get elsewhere, which is something I like about your stuff. I do live streams. I've been doing more of them recently. So check.
I saw you last night. I was watching for a while in bed.
Yeah, this is the thing. You guys watch and I know, and you don't say anything, and I'm like, you're there.
It's
and then
I can't type on my
lurking
TV.
In the background.
Yeah. I pull you up on the TV a lot more than on the computer. I feel like when I'm on the computer, I feel like I have to be productive. But on the TV, I was just like, oh, let's go watch people do cool stuff, Yeah. And then I never get to. I need a keyboard for my TV.
You've just got to be careful if you do that because it's informative. Andrew's streams are actually informative. So if you're thinking you're going to sit there, have it on in the background, but you can do that and you should do that for his hours and viewership and all the rest. But you're going to get something out of it as well. So definitely
hopefully
check it out.
They're informative. I try.
Yeah. Yeah, I have fun watching them. It's entertaining, and I see like the cool stuff that Andrew's working on, especially like seeing all the art stuff that you do. But it's interesting seeing you go through the process and figuring things out and watching it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's something we can talk about later. So it's very cool. All right, so I just shared Andrew's channel and Dave's channel down in chat for everybody to go check out. And I guess we'll wrap it up and come back next week. So. Yeah. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you all next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and all that stuff. Bye.
Bye, everyone.